Hello, everyone. Today we're going to talk about lists. List is also another type of value, I said, and this is how we write lists. We use square brackets when we want to write list. For example, this is an empty list, doesn't contain anything. So if we print L, which is the list, so this is what we obtain, an empty list. So we can have elements in the list, integers, for instance. Now when we print the list, we obtain the list of integers 0, 1, 2, and 3. We can also add additional types of values like float, 5.6, 3.5. We can also have, so this is the list we have. We can also have strings. So those are just types of strings, and upon printing, we see that we have the list containing all these types of values. Okay, so let's see how we can access specific elements within the list. So like this is element 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How can we access these elements? So we are going to use again square brackets to index. So that is index 1. So let's see what happens when we print index 1 of the list. We get 1. So you notice that when we index 1, we obtain the second value. So actually the indexing starts from 0 for a list. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is not 1 because of this one. Let's change this to something else. Change this to 2, 5, 4, 7, etc. Something like that. Now when we print this, as you can see, we obtain 4. And 4 is the second element here in this list. So this is index 1. This is index 0, index 1, index 2, index 3, index 4, etc. 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 So like the last one is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I think. Yes, so that is the 7th element in that list. We can also access the last element by counting backwards, but now we start from 1, negative 1. So this is negative 1, negative 2, first from the last, the second last, third last. So third last will be negative 3. Let's see if negative 3 is the third last, which is 3.5. So this is negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, negative 6, negative 7, negative 8. So negative 8 is actually the first element. Now, when we use negative 9, we are going to get an error, which is an index error, list out of list index out of range because there is no -9. The range ends at -8. So an extra one is not available, therefore we obtain that kind of an error. The same case when we use, so there are 8 of them, index 8. There is no index 8 because it starts from 0, it will end at 7, index 7, because we have 8 elements. Okay, so you know how to access elements of a list. How about accessing subsets? How about accessing subsets? So let's say 0, 1. What do we get? See, whatever we get is a set, is a subset, a sublist. I mean, so you can see this is list. It's in square brackets. This one is not a list. This one we just access the elements inside the list, but not a sublist. So now when we use this, we are calling a sublist. But let's see what is happening here. What is happening here is that when we call it this way, we are going to start with index 1 and end at index 0 and at index 1, but not include index 1. So if we want the first and the second, so this is 0, index 1, and index 2. So we are going to up to index 2, but not include index 2. That means we are going to obtain these 2 elements in that list. Let's say we want these three, are they three elements. So this starts from 0, 1, 2, 3. We are going to start from index 3, 4, 5, 6, but not include 6. So we're going to stop at 6, but we know it's not going to include 6. So it's going to start from index 3, index 4, and index 5. And that is what we have. Index 3, index 4, and index 5. Now, what about that? So what happens here is we are going to do to list every element in this list starting from the beginning to the 6 to index 6, but not including index 6. So we're going to stop at that point, starting from the beginning to index 5. It's because we are stopping at 6, but not including 6. The same way is when we start like this. We start from index 1. When we list from index 2, we are going to start from index 2 up to the end. Index 2 up to the end, and index 2 is 7 all the way up to the end, which is a list. The list. Okay. Something else that I need to mention is assignment. So for instance, if I say here, so we can see the element at index 2 is 7. I can change that to 12. And let's see, so the first list, we are going to print the first list here, sorry, up here. So I'm going to print the first list, which is this list. Then I'm going to update the index 2 element, and then I'm going to reprint the list and see what happens here. So here is the case. As you can see here, index 2 is 7, and here index 2 has already been updated to a different number. So we can change elements in the list by updating them. Let's change the last one. So we are going to say the last one is let's make it 12. So now in this case, we are starting again from the list. Now this one will remain as 7, but now we changing the last element here to 12. So you observe the last element is now 12. We can also delete elements, specific indices. For example, suppose I want to delete these elements with different types of values so that we are left with the integers. I'm going to use something like N. So this starts from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. From index 4, to, so this is 4, 5, 6. So we're going to 7, but not including 7 because 7 has already been changed to an integer. And then we're going to say to set that to an empty set. So that will clear everything from index 4 to index 6 because 7 is not included here. And now let's print the two lists here. Let me print the list here, then we can print it. So let's see what we have here. So this is what we have first. Then we change that to 12. And then now we've deleted everything from here to there. You should also note that when we try to delete something like, let's say this one, now the list is being updated. So let me try not to update the list here. Yeah, we can print it once, just one. Okay, so what we have here is now we have this. We do not have a 12 here. Now suppose I want to delete this. So we can call this, no. Okay, let me delete this, but using the same way. Let's see what happens when I do the deleting in the same way. So, and you will realize that it's not actually deleting 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 4. Index 4, we're going to set it to empty and see what happens. So we have seen when we set a subset to an empty set, then we are going to delete the elements that are found within those indices. Now, let's see what happens here. Now we can see here, we have not deleted, but we have managed to reassign it to an empty list. So that also tells us that within a list, we can also have lists within a list. So a list can contain many types of values, including list itself, among others, like Booleans also. So we can also have list within list. But suppose I wanted to delete that, this list, I would use something else. I would say, so this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a bit complicated. Let me try and see what happens. Let me check if I can, because the index I'm trying to think about does not exist. Let me just try check, because I'm suspecting I'm gonna get an error. but I didn't. Yeah. Anyway, I think that is how you're supposed to do. Although this it doesn't have index 5, but for the purpose of deleting, you can say, actually, this does not even call any element in index 5 because this is supposed to end at index 5, but not including index 5. That means it's 4. So that calls the subset containing only one element at index 4 and is replacing that subset with an empty set. So remember there's a difference between this one. We replaced an element with a set, an empty set. But in this case, we are replacing a set with an empty set. So that's why we are deleting the element instead of replacing it with an empty list. You need to do some practice so that you can understand that. So we have seen that we can have a list inside or within a list. So how does that work? Let's try to make this a list. So let me just delete this, then I put on the moment. So now we have a list, and within that list, the last element in that list is a list. So let's see, when we print the last element, we have the list of the last element. So this last element is a list which contains 2 elements. So this list, we have index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So at index 6 is a list. So we do not have an index 7. So don't say this is index 6 and 7. No, this is index 6. But then how can we get into that index 6 and call in the second element or the first element? So that is being the last. So this is a list. So we can also index this is index 0. So I'm going to add another index here, 0, and that calls the first element or index 0 inside that list. So we are supposed to get hello, which is index 0. And the next one is 1, index 1, which is lists. So when we put index 2, we're going to get an error since there's no index 2. It's just index 0 and index 1. So that's how we access elements of lists inside lists. There's something else I need to mention, and that is adding elements inside our list. So we're going to use a command here that append, and then we can append anything, any type of element, like a string. So that's a string called string. Let's try to print, copy. So now we're going to print the list, and then we're going to append, and then we're going to print the list and see what we obtain. So this is what we get. And every time we append, we just add an element in the list. So we are having an additional element here, which is now the last element. So when you append, it usually goes to become the last element of the list. So I think that's all I wanted to mention about our list.